I've always had an obsession with abandoned places. There's something eerie but fascinating about stepping into a space frozen in time, where nature slowly reclaims what humans left behind. So when my friend Mark suggested we check out an old asylum on the outskirts of town, I didn't hesitate. The place had been shut down for decades, its history buried beneath whispers and urban legends. Some said it closed due to inhumane treatment of patients. Others believed the staff simply vanished overnight, leaving everything as it was. The more I read about it, the more intrigued I became. We arrived just before sunset. The asylum loomed over us, its windows gaping like empty eye sockets. The air was unnaturally still, as if the world around it had stopped existing. A rusted sign at the entrance barely clung to the chain-link fence, its lettering too faded to read. Getting in was easier than expected. Part of the fence had collapsed long ago. We slipped through and made our way to the main building. The door hung slightly ajar, creaking softly as we stepped inside. The first thing that hit me was the smell, a mix of mold, decay, and something else. Something foul, almost like rotting meat. The floor was littered with old patient files, scattered as if someone had rifled through them in a hurry. A wheelchair sat in the middle of the hallway, its wheels rusted in place. "This place is unreal," Mark whispered, shining his flashlight ahead. We wandered deeper, moving through rooms filled with shattered furniture and peeling wallpaper. Everything was eerily silent, except for the occasional drip of water from a cracked ceiling. But then, as we turned a corner, we heard it. Footsteps, not ours. They were slow, deliberate, coming from somewhere down the hall. Mark and I exchanged a glance, both of us holding our breath. We weren't alone. I swallowed hard and aimed my flashlight in the direction of the sound. Nothing. Just another long corridor stretching into darkness. But then we heard it again, closer this time. Mark grabbed my arm. "We should go." For once, I didn't argue. We turned back the way we came, but something felt wrong. The hallway seemed longer, as if the building itself had changed. The rooms we passed looked different, their contents rearranged. The wheelchair we had seen earlier was now overturned, one wheel spinning slowly. That's when we saw her. A woman stood at the end of the corridor, barely visible in the dim light. Her hospital gown was stained, her head tilted at an unnatural angle. Stringy black hair obscured most of her face, but I could see her mouth. A twisted, open grin. She didn't move. She just stood there staring. Mark whispered my name, but I couldn't speak. I couldn't breathe. Then she took a step forward. We bolted. I don't remember running down the stairs or bursting through the front door, but suddenly we were outside, gasping for air. The building loomed behind us, silent once more. We didn't stop running until we reached the car. Mark fumbled with the keys, cursing under his breath. When he finally got the engine started, I risked one last glance at the asylum. She was standing in the doorway, still smiling. We never spoke about that night again, but sometimes I dream about that woman. In my dreams, she isn't standing at the end of a hallway. She's right beside my bed. I used to love exploring abandoned places. There was something eerie but fascinating about walking through the remnants of a life that had been left behind. It felt like stepping into a time capsule, a frozen moment that told a story of its own. That was until I learned that some places are abandoned for a reason. This happened about 5 years ago. My friend Mike and I had heard rumors about an old farmhouse sitting on the outskirts of town, past a stretch of woods no one really went through anymore. The story went that a family just up and vanished one night, leaving everything behind. Some said they died, others said they ran from something. Either way, no one ever moved in afterward, and the place had been rotting in the middle of nowhere ever since. It took some effort, but we eventually found it. The house sat in the middle of an overgrown field, half of its structure sagging under years of neglect. The windows were boarded up, but the front door had been left slightly ajar, as if waiting for us. Inside, the air was thick with dust and something else, something stale, like old rot. The furniture was still there, coated in grime. A dining table sat with dishes still on it, as if someone had been in the middle of a meal and simply walked away. Family photos lined the walls, their faces obscured by years of dirt. Mike was excited, already snapping pictures with his phone. But I felt uneasy. It was the kind of silence that felt wrong, like the house was holding its breath. Then we heard it, a creaking noise from upstairs, slow, deliberate. Mike and I froze. We exchanged a look, half expecting the other to say they imagined it, but we both heard it. Probably just the house settling, Mike whispered, but there was no confidence in his voice. Another creak, closer this time. We should have left then. Any sane person would have. But instead, Mike did something stupid. He called out, "Hello?" His voice was hoarse, hesitant. Silence. Then, a soft shuffling sound. It wasn't just the house settling. Something was moving upstairs. Mike pointed his flashlight up the staircase. The light barely cut through the darkness. That's when we saw it, just for a second. A shadow, not standing, but crawling at the top of the stairs. It moved unnaturally, its limbs bending in ways that weren't right. Then it bolted down the hallway. We ran. I don't even remember how we got out. 1 second we were in the house, and the next we were sprinting through the overgrown field, not daring to look back. When we finally stopped at Mike's car, gasping for breath, we tried to laugh it off, tell ourselves it was probably just an animal. But I knew better. As we sat there, catching our breath, something banged against the car window. We screamed, but when we turned, nothing was there. I haven't been back since. I don't know what we saw that night, and I don't want to. But sometimes, when I'm alone at night, I swear I hear that same creaking sound, slow, deliberate, like something just out of sight, waiting. I was 16 the first time I saw the motel. It sat on the outskirts of town, long forgotten and partially swallowed by the surrounding forest. The building was a 2-story husk of what it once was, its neon sign shattered, its windows gaping like empty eye sockets. People whispered about it, how it had shut down suddenly in the late 80s after a string of disappearances. Some said it was a drug den. Others claimed it was haunted. I didn't believe in ghosts, but I did believe in dares. It was my best friend, Tyler, who came up with the idea. We go inside, snap a few pictures, and leave. Easy. I agreed. Looking back, I wish I hadn't. We went at night. The moon was nothing but a sliver, barely enough light to cut through the thick shadows draped over the building. Tyler and I climbed through a broken window, landing in what must have been the lobby. The air inside was thick, stale, like something had been rotting for years. Our footsteps echoed as we moved deeper inside. The walls were lined with peeling floral wallpaper, and the floor was coated in debris. Old furniture, crumbling plaster, shattered glass. But the worst part, the silence. No wind, no creaking from the old building, just stillness. We split up. Tyler took the left hallway. and I took the right. Most of the rooms were trashed, mattresses torn open, furniture flipped over. But one door at the very end of the hall was different. It was closed, and it was clean. I hesitated before gripping the handle. It was ice cold. The door creaked open to reveal a perfectly preserved motel room, untouched by time. The bed was neatly made, the curtains drawn shut. A dusty suitcase resting on a chair in the corner. That's when I saw the notebook on the nightstand. I picked it up, flipping to a random page. The handwriting was frantic, desperate. "He's in the walls. He's watching. Don't turn around." My breath caught in my throat. I didn't want to look. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run. But something compelled me to turn. And then I saw it. The closet door had slid open an inch, just enough to reveal a sliver of absolute blackness, a void where light refused to touch. Then the whisper came, right by my ear. "Why did you come back?" I bolted. I sprinted down the hall, my flashlight bouncing wildly. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. When I reached the lobby, I found Tyler, his face pale, his hands shaking. "We need to leave now." He didn't argue. We didn't talk the entire drive home. I didn't tell him what I saw, and I didn't ask him why he was crying. But later that night, as I lay in bed, I heard it again. A whisper. "Why did you come back?"